Have you ever had someone walk into your house? Uninvited. Now imagine it's your own mother-in-law, while you're not even home. That's what happened to a couple just trying to set simple boundaries. Was it too harsh or long overdue? Let's walk through what really happened, and you decide. Have you ever had that gut feeling, like your space was violated, but you couldn't quite believe it until it happened? Picture this. You're going about your day, maybe at work or running errands, and suddenly you find out that your mother-in-law showed up at your kids' daycare to pick them up. Unannounced. No heads up, no permission. That's exactly what happened to this couple. Now, some people might say, "Oh, come on, it's just grandma, she probably meant well." And yeah, intentions matter, but so do boundaries. Because right after that, she didn't stop there. She then decided to go to their house while they weren't home and tried to go inside. Why? To oil the deck. You heard that right. Not for an emergency, not because she was worried something was wrong, just to do a bit of home maintenance, completely on her own terms. Let's pause here. Imagine how that feels. Someone entering your home, not out of concern or urgency, but because they think it's okay, because they believe their presence and choices override your privacy. And here's where it gets tricky. This isn't about a stranger, it's about family. Someone who loves your kids, someone you probably want in your life. But love doesn't mean you get to override someone's autonomy, does it? When the wife found out, she and her husband decided to set a clear line, not out of spite, not out of anger, but out of the need for clarity. They sent a calm, direct message. It asked, respectfully, for no more uninvited house visits, no daycare pickups, and no solo babysitting for now. They made it clear, family time would now be just the four of them, and expectations needed to be respected. Was that too much? Let's consider this. Boundaries aren't walls, they're doors with locks. You decide who comes in, when, and under what circumstances. And when someone crosses those lines without asking, something shifts. The trust, a little cracked. The comfort, definitely shaken. And when you're raising kids, trying to keep a stable routine and peace at home, that kind of chaos just doesn't help. Of course, not everyone sees it that way. The mother-in-law flipped, said it was a gross overreaction, cut contact. For a while, things got tense. The couple still showed up to family events out of respect, like their daughter's birthday and the mother-in-law's 60th. But beyond that, radio silence. And that raises the question. When someone crosses a boundary you never thought you'd need to spell out, what's the right way to respond? Is it better to keep the peace and let things slide, or set a firm line and risk the fallout? We're just getting started, because in the next part of this story, things go deeper. There's a confrontation, a surprising reaction from the husband, and a meeting that no one really wants, but everyone knows is coming. But before we get there, what would you have done? Would you have drawn that line, or waited until things got worse? Let us know your thoughts, because the next chapter might just change how you see family boundaries altogether. So here's a question for you. What happens after you finally say, enough, but the other person refuses to hear it? Last time, we talked about a couple who drew a clear line with their mother-in-law. No more surprise daycare pickups, no unannounced visits, and absolutely no entering their home without permission. They sent a respectful message, unified as a couple, and thought it would at least open the door to a calmer, more respectful dynamic. But instead, she shut the door in their faces. The mother-in-law called it an overreaction, grossly unfair, in her words. She stopped speaking to them for a while, not just cooled off, full silent treatment. And let's be honest, when things go radio silent in families, it doesn't usually mean peace. It means pressure, tension, that sense that a storm is brewing somewhere off-stage. Still, the couple tried to keep things civil. They went to her 60th birthday. She came to their daughter's party. Everyone smiled, posed for pictures, but underneath it all, nothing had been resolved. And sometimes, pretending things are fine can make them even worse. Then came the turning point. The mother-in-law asked to meet with just her son. A private conversation, just the two of them. He agreed. And during that conversation, she let loose. For a full 30 minutes, she laid into him, criticizing the boundaries, questioning their marriage dynamics, and asking one pointed question. Did you know she sent that message? And here's the part that really hit her. He said yes. Not only did he know, he approved it. They were a team, a united front. That stunned her. Maybe she expected him to disown the message, shift blame, or create distance between himself and his wife. Instead, he did the opposite. He backed her, calmly, clearly, and without apology. From there, the mother-in-law changed tactics. She requested a new meeting, with all three of them. She said she didn't understand the message, that she didn't know what she'd done wrong, and that she needed clarity. Now pause with me a moment. Is this confusion genuine? Or is it a way of shifting the conversation, pulling it away from the issue of boundaries and back toward emotional control? It's a tricky thing, right? Because sometimes people truly don't see the lines they're crossing, especially when they've been operating in a certain family dynamic for decades. But other times, that confusion is performative, a way to stall, a way to force you to explain, justify, and eventually backpedal. So now the couple has a decision to make. Do they go to the meeting? Do they spell out everything again, risking more backlash, more drama? Or do they stay firm, restate their message, and let her deal with her discomfort? Here's where we turn it over to you. Have you ever had to reinforce a boundary twice, because the first time someone just wouldn't listen? And what do you do when "I don't understand" is less about clarity and more about control? We'll explore how the couple approached the meeting in the next episode. Modus for lap solutions that will so still, but for now we want to hear from you. Have you ever walked into a conversation thinking it was about clearing the air, only to realize it was really about defending your sanity? That's exactly what this couple faced. After weeks of tension, silence, and pressure, the mother-in-law finally asked for a sit-down with both of them. She claimed she just wanted to understand the message, the one that said, no more surprise daycare pickups, no more entering their home without permission, and no more stepping in without being asked. At first glance, it sounds fair, right? She wants a chance to talk it out, but let's be honest. When someone says, "I don't understand," it can mean one of two things. Either they genuinely didn't see the issue, or they're trying to pull you into a debate you never agreed to have. And this wife, she knew exactly which one it was. She prepared herself, emotionally and mentally, for that meeting. Not to argue, not to revisit the past, but to reinforce the message, calmly, clearly, together with her husband, as a united front. They weren't there to pick a fight, they were there to set the tone. Still, part of her couldn't shake the feeling that the meeting wasn't about the content of the message, it was about control. You see, the mother-in-law wasn't looking for clarity, she was looking for cracks. She wanted to see if the couple would cave, if she could get them to soften their tone, if she could find a way back into the center of their family without having to change. And this is something so many people face when they try to establish boundaries, especially with parents or in-laws. The boundary itself is often clear. What's unclear is how far the other person will go to test it. Will they play the victim? Will they question your tone, your timing, your motives? Will they accuse you of being ungrateful, dramatic, disrespectful? In this meeting, all of that came up. The mother-in-law said it was hurting her health. She said she was being excluded and that this whole thing was not how family should operate. At one point, she asked, "Why are you doing this to me?" But here's the twist. The couple didn't budge. They acknowledged her feelings, but they didn't abandon their boundaries. They repeated what they'd said from the beginning. These expectations were about respect, routine, and safety for their children and for their household. And they weren't up for debate. That's not easy to do, especially when someone you care about is clearly upset. But sometimes you have to choose discomfort over dysfunction, peace over people-pleasing. And that's exactly what they did. Now here's where we want to hear from you. Have you ever had a conversation like this, where the real issue wasn't what you said, but the fact that you dared to say it at all? What do you do when someone keeps pushing back, not because they don't understand, but because they don't like the answer? Let us know, because in the next part, we'll explore what happens after the confrontation, when the dust settles and the family has to decide what comes next. Have you ever walked out of a tough conversation, not with closure, but with a strange kind of quiet? That's what happened after the meeting. No shouting, no dramatic exits, no miraculous breakthrough either. The couple had calmly restated their boundaries. The mother-in-law had cried, protested, and insisted she still didn't understand. But eventually, the conversation ended. And then, silence. Not the kind of silence that feels peaceful, the kind that's heavy, lingering, like everyone's waiting for the other shoe to drop. Days turned into weeks. No calls, no visits, no texts. For some, that might sound like relief. But for this couple, it wasn't so simple. Because here's the thing, no one tells you about setting boundaries. Even when you do it the right way, respectfully, clearly, with love, it can still lead to emotional fallout. You might expect anger, but sometimes what you get is distance, not out of cruelty, but out of discomfort. And the hardest part? Explaining that to other people, especially family. Suddenly there are whispers. She just wants to see the grandkids. Can't you two let it go already? Is it really that serious? That pressure starts creeping in, not just from the person you set the boundary with, but from everyone around you. People who weren't there, people who didn't hear the conversation, people who don't understand the years of build-up that led to it. And now, this couple had to navigate not just their own emotions, but the emotional reactions of everyone else, all while still trying to parent, keep a routine, and protect the peace in their own home. Let's pause and be honest for a second. Sometimes, maintaining a boundary takes more emotional energy than setting it in the first place, because while the message was clear, no uninvited visits, no pickups, no pushing past our limits, the consequences lingered. Their relationship with the mother-in-law was now distant, tense, polite on the surface, but fragile underneath. And yet, that distance, it wasn't rejection, it was reflection, space to breathe, space to let emotions cool, space to decide, individually and as a family, what respectful reconnection might look like. Not every boundary is a door that slams shut. Sometimes, it's more like a pause button. But here's the question no one can answer but you. When someone doesn't respect your boundaries, how do you decide if the relationship is worth rebuilding or worth releasing? That's where this couple found themselves. Not in a war, not in a dramatic family feud, just in the quiet aftermath of standing their ground, holding space, waiting. And we want to ask you, have you ever had to sit with that kind of silence? The kind that's not angry, not final, just unresolved. What helped you find peace in it? Or decide what came next? Because in our final part, we'll explore what moving forward looks like when you've drawn the line, kept it firm, and are still trying to live with love. Have you ever wondered what moving on really looks like when the person you're setting boundaries with is still in your life? Not a stranger, not someone you can walk away from, but family, close. In the next neighborhood, maybe even the next room. That's where this couple landed. Weeks after their firm, respectful boundary conversation, things were still quiet, no fights, no reconciliations, just a new kind of reality, one where their lives weren't revolving around emotional chaos, but also one where old patterns weren't instantly replaced with something better. And honestly, that's okay, because not every story wraps up with a bow. Some relationships don't heal overnight. Some trust needs time, not just words. And sometimes, love means staying steady, even when the other person is struggling to meet you halfway. That's the lesson this couple began to live out. They didn't push for closure. They didn't demand apologies. They didn't even expect their mother-in-law to suddenly get it. What they did do was keep showing up as a team. They stayed kind, consistent, and clear. When birthdays came around, they invited her. When family events popped up, they attended, but always together, as a unit. And here's the key. They kept their boundaries in place without turning them into a wall. The message wasn't, "We're done with you." It was, "We need things to be different." That difference, it's what allowed space for future connection on healthy terms. And slowly, that space started to shift things. Their mother-in-law didn't transform overnight, but she started asking before stopping by. She didn't fully understand the boundaries, but she began respecting them more often than not. And that was enough for the couple to feel peace, not perfection, but progress. Because in the real world, healing isn't always dramatic. Sometimes it's just the absence of drama. And that's a win too. So if you've been in this situation, or if you're living in one now, here's the truth. You don't need everyone to agree with your boundaries. You need to believe in them, and you need to live them consistently with the people who stand beside you. Now, before we wrap up, let's shift the spotlight to you, our incredible community. If you've ever had to set a boundary with a parent or in-law, big or small, drop a collo in the comments. And if you've ever stuck to a boundary even when it was uncomfortable, drop a axe. We want to see how many of us are learning, growing, and protecting peace together. And if today's story hit home for you, share it with a friend who might need to hear it. Because sometimes the first step to peace is knowing you're not alone. We'll be back next time with more real stories, hard choices, and honest conversations. Until then, stay grounded, stay kind, and most of all, stay true to your boundaries.